Alright, in the last video I made this front part of the Outja mask, but in this video I'm going to go through and make the dread appendages that the Uacha has coming off of their heads, and this flap of skin that comes out from underneath the helmet where you see all the dreads come out of, and all the little decorations and stuff on it. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to start doing is making dreads. Lots and lots and lots of dreads. Originally I was going to use tubing, and I calculated that the mask and finish would be a lot heavier. But I was looking in the insulation at Lowe's, and I found this stuff called backer rod. This stuff is 5/8 inches. You might want an inch, perhaps, or 7/8 of an inch if you're a larger person and you have a larger mask. But for my size, this is what I'm using. And I've already measured and cut these into lengths. Next, I'm going to take the scissors and trim the end here so that it angles down more or less to a point. Next, I'm going to use a heat gun, and I'm going to heat this. And I already have one here that I finished. And the nice part about the heating is that it will stiffen this up a little bit and straighten it. And you'll notice I stopped about right here so that it keeps its bend and it still has most of the movement up top so that they can sway and flop around still. And you're going to want to be careful when using a heat gun on this type of foam. It's not EVA foam, so it can catch fire or melt real easy. Alright, now that I finished all my dreads, I had to go through and paint them. And to paint them, I just used my airbrush, and I painted them with some opaque black that I just thinned out with some water. And these are all drying. I was hoping to just lay them out and paint them all at once, but I ended up having to paint one at a time, which was kind of tedious, and actually sucked up a lot of paint, surprisingly enough. And this isn't all of them, of course. The other ones are spread throughout my garage. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way that they turned out once I heated them and painted them. I think they look pretty good. Now I'm going to go back to the face mask and start doing some stuff that I never finished in the first video. Alright, so a couple things I didn't finish on this in the last video were I had left the masking on this, I took it off, and I found this little weird plastic doodad T-piece. I was looking up, you can actually buy the center piece for the targeting laser online, but I wasn't going to go that specific. I just found this thing, it fit, I stuck it there. So next, I'm going to take and paint that area black, and I'm going to use Model Masters black and a rather small brush. Alright, so I painted this with the Model Masters, and also already put in one lens, and I really wanted green or yellow tinted lenses, and I was at the dollar store looking for sunglasses with yellow lenses, or green. I figured I'd find yellow more easily, but they didn't have anything, and I'm also really broke. So when I got home, I thought about it. I don't know why I didn't think of this to begin with, but I've ended up using a 2-liter bottle top, and I cut that out and glued it in, and now I have my green tinted lens. Alright, so now that I have both lenses in here, it's time to move on and start making the area of the predator's head that is protruding from the mask. And to make this, I just cut out a piece of EVA foam to the shape that I wanted, and then heated and tweaked it. Then I went and hot glued another piece that I just kind of rough cut out, and that's to help me attach all the dreadlocks to. But before I glue this into this, I need to start weathering this and making it look fleshy and scaly and painting it and then gluing it in afterwards. Alright, so one thing I really needed was for this to have some texture that looked kind of pebbled and somewhat reptilian. So what I ended up doing was taking my hot glue gun and a piece of scrap foam until I figured out just the right amount of pressure to get the look that I wanted. And after some trial and error, I went ahead and did it on this. I even did the edges, even though it's probably a little bit overkill. And next, I'm going to start airbrushing and painting this. First, I took some brown, white, and yellow and mixed it together until I got a tan that was a little bit more earthen, natural looking than the actual color of the foam. So after the tan, I randomly ran around with some green and thinned it out and just sprayed it in a few areas and left the others the regular shade. And lastly, I took some black and I really thinned it out to the point that it was translucent, and I turned the PSI down to around 10 and just very slowly and meticulously went from one side to the next about 4 or 5 times, just spraying in the middle of the little scaly pebbled pieces until I got the look that I wanted. Alright, so I went and glued it on using a hot glue gun, and first, just to get it stuck in place, I used some super glue, but then I sealed around the edges on the inside with some hot glue. And if you couldn't tell from that brief little painting clips, you can see why I painted this first, then glued it on. And, I mean, this was pretty tedious, but I have a feeling this is not going to feel tedious after I get done doing all the dreadlocks, because not only do I get to glue them all on, but I get to put all the little decorations and banded jewelry on it that I am pretty much going to make from scratch, every single piece. Alright, so before I can glue my dreads on and begin to uh, decorate them, because the Predator's dreadlock appendages have all these little gold bands and jewelry and whatever on it. I'm going to do custom stuff for this, of course, but I have to finish the back. And part of the reason why I didn't have this just one solid piece all the way around is I wanted to be able to take it off and on comfortably, and I didn't want to mess with this, but I wanted it to fit tight. So this is never going to get sealed. This is going to be covered up by all the different dreadlock appendages that are going to be coming down. So you're not going to see this gap. But what I did, and this is the reason why I cut this, you notice I put that kind of a U-curve in this, is because the curvature of the back of your head is obviously not flat. So I didn't want just a flat piece of EVA foam sticking out this way or coming down too straight, because it's not going to allow for the curve of my head. So I took a piece of EVA foam, cut it to fit, and then just heated it until I got a curve. And now I'm cutting out a couple pieces here. I just kind of put a piece of foam behind it. I drew out what I needed, and now I'm going to go ahead and contact cement these in on both sides. And once that's done, I can finally start gluing on all the dreads. So out of the 2 bags that I purchased, I ended up with 21 long ones and 10 shorter medium-sized ones. These are going to go around these edges here, and the longer ones are of course going to go in the back. And I already know this is not going to be enough. This isn't even all the long ones, but just looking at it I can tell it's not, and I held a few up there. Probably going to need to make at least 2 more bags worth, I figure, which is going to be a lot, but I want to have a nice thick even look whenever it's done. Alright, so I've begun gluing these onto the side here. This one got a little beat up. I'm going to have to repaint some of these. But anyways, I started gluing them in, going from this corner down and the corner to here. And I just wanted to get the shorter to medium-sized pieces overlapped and glued in here on both sides first. Next, I'm going to start gluing them in along the top here. Alright, this is all the progress that I've made so far. I just put one row running straight around here, and I did the best I could to not make them symmetrical, so it's kind of overlapping and going every which way. I figured that'd make it look more natural. Now that I've done this, with all these attached up in here, I'm going to start doing another row underneath it. However, I don't fortunately have enough of these dreadlocks. I made, what did I say, 32 total, I think, or 31, I don't know. But I still need at least another 25, 30 after this. Alright, I got yet more backer rod and made about another 20 or so dreads. And I'm going to go ahead and paint those up like the other ones. So for these, instead of airbrushing them, I decided to just use a mixture of Mod Podge and black acrylic craft paint. And the reason for this is the paint from the airbrush didn't stick the best, so I'm just going to go ahead and hand paint these. I'm going to do one side, let it dry, flip it over, do the other side. Alright, so right now I am up to about 60 dreadlocks, but I feel like it's filled out really nicely and looks pretty good. And all these I glued on, of course, with just hot glue. Now, next what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and flip this upside down, and I'm going to put just some beads of hot glue around the base of where I glued all these in just to help hold them in place and reinforce everything. So I'm just going to refer to these as the generic gold bands. They're going to go around the backside of the actual mask and all the dreads. I'm going to put 3 to a dread. I'm not going to do every single one, but I'm going to try to space them out in a way that it, fills out pretty more or less even, yet still remaining somewhat organic. And to make these, I'm taking these black rectangular pieces of 3mm EVA foam that I'm then heating on the inside here and curving. And next what I'm doing with them is taking some champagne gold metallic craft paint and just dry brushing a layer on. I'm not sealing the foam because I want it to look pitted and have, kind of a rough look to it. And then I'm just using hot glue to glue them on. And what I'm going to do after this, once I get them all painted and glued on, is I'm going to take some pure gold full cart metallic craft paint, and I'm just going to brush on some highlights and stuff throughout the center and wherever on here just to make them pop a little bit. Alright, now that I've got, well, at least these main ones put on, I'm going to go ahead and over the champagne gold that I already painted on it, I'm going to use some pure gold from Folk Arts metallic paint, just a little bit, and I'm going to use this to make some highlights and lowlights on it, and just kind of dry brush it up and scuff it up. This pure gold also isn't quite as sparkly, so it will take away a little bit of the tackiness that comes from the champagne gold. I'm just going to go through and randomly do that on all of the different pieces until I get the desired effect. Alright, I got all the weathering and stuff done. You'll notice I didn't put any of these wide bands on any of these smaller dreads on the side. That's because I'm going to make each one of these slightly individually different. Some are going to look kind of like carved bone, others are going to look like maybe odds and ends. Like, for example, this little brass ring here came with some plumbing kit for our sink. We didn't actually end up needing the part. We only needed a couple pieces from the actual thing. But I saved it. At the time, I thought to myself, I don't really know where I'll use this. And, with the size and shape of it, it's not really going to work for, like, a custom lightsaber build or anything. I remember thinking at the time, this would go great on some Predator dreadlocks. And I thought to myself, that seems like such a task. I'm never going to actually make a Predator mask, let alone the dreadlocks. And here I am doing it. So yeah, some of it's just going to be made up from whatever random odds and ends. Others are going to be custom made little foam pieces. Okay, so for some of the smaller decorations, some of the more simple ones I'm going to do, I just took some 2mm EVA foam and painted it with the champagne gold, which I will then trim to length and hot glue on. Also did another one with sterling silver, and of course I'm going to dry brush these once they're glued on to give them some highlights and lowlights. And for this one, I just took an X-Acto knife and I scored the EVA foam. I didn't cut it through all the way, just to give it some ridges and definition, and then cut some strips out of it and paint it for that. And I'm going to go ahead and hot glue these on just like the other ones. Okay, now that I've glued these on, I've begun to go ahead and lightly brush on a little bit of the pure gold over the champagne gold. And I just dab a little bit here on the tip of it. And then I go over to wherever my piece is. And I just put some through the center. And then I just kind of brush that out to help even it out. Give it some highlights. some contrast to the rest of it. Just like that. Alright, some of the other different pieces I made was a wider piece with wider spaced lines where I painted it before putting it on, but as opposed to these up here where the cracks are mostly black and the top is filled in, I took great care to goop a lot of paint on this and then scrape all the excess off the top so there was more in the cracks. Just little things like that to help it pop and look different. And then I used some brown EVA 5mm craft foam to make this look somewhat wooden and carved. I thought it would be thicker, so I didn't want to use the 3 or the 2. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with the way this looks so far. I may, in the future, as I find different things, add different stuff. So I left some of these blank. I just put enough in so it would help even it out and fill it up. And for the most part, I am rather happy with the way that this came out. I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty stoked on it. Now I just need to try it on. Alright, hopefully you guys enjoyed the video and this gave you some new ideas and it was helpful. And if you like this video, please like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.